We're going over System Concepts, Article 29, Gossip in the Work. Sometimes we observe bad behavior in students advancing through the phases of perception. We hear their personal conversations with each other and determine that most of their discussion is gossip about other people's behavior. This causes us turmoil, since we cannot understand how people that are claiming to be spiritual can be so frivolous and derisive in their demeanor. They claim to be more perceptive and accepting. However, in contrast, all we can perceive is mockery. The problem is that people that mature in their perception feel increased distance from immature concepts. This distance is felt as hatred, annoyance, and separation that causes suffering for the individual. The only solution to avoid the pain is for them to laugh and mock the immaturity of the portrayed behavior and thought process. While some try seclusion, this is not a viable solution for advancement. Discernments must be collected from people in the various developmental phases. The discernments require an emotional component, and therefore indifference is not a correct strategy to deal with immaturity. And here's a quote. "And I had another reason for making this open interpretation. As it is written in the Zohar, one must learn even a little even from nonsense. As it is written, as far as light excelleth darkness." After I completed my time in the city of Warsaw, in the state of Poland, confined to my chamber, having nothing to do with the darkness of my surroundings, I have been blessed with settling in the holy city of Jerusalem. And when I walked among the people here, I saw the poverty of my people, the poverty of their mind. Their foolish laughter was in my ears as the noise of pots into the city, mocking and trampling the heart and soul of our yearnings, slandering the Lord, his law, and his people in a loud voice without any wisdom, understanding and knowledge in the wisdom of Kabbalah at all. Rather, it is an assortment of words and names, no sense and no moral, only literal words. It is a privilege to chatter idle words in the written text with complete faith that they are holy things, and that thus the purpose of creation will be completed upon us. And when those who engage in the literal text with complete faith increase in number, the Messiah King will come at once. For by that the whole correction will be completed and nothing more is needed. From the article, The Introduction to the Book from the Mouth of the Sage by Bala Sulam. Sarcasm is a well-known tool for Kabbalists to express in detail situations that internally bother them to the core. It sweetens the judgment of the affliction caused by childish and imaginative nonsense. They care deeply about the wisdom and the goal of internal power. It hurts them to hear others unknowingly trash and confuse the matters. Normally they use such misfortune as a platform to produce material, to write articles to clean the concepts to the public or for the friends who are advancing. This is how they use a dire situation and manipulate it into a deficiency to innovate in the names, appellations, and expressions of the wisdom of internal power. And here's a quote. "Finally, I met with the famous ones among them, people who have already worn out their years dwelling in the writings of the Ari and the Zohar. They have so succeeded that they have become proficient and conversant in all the writings of the Ari. They have the reputation as being the holiest people in the land. I asked them if they had studied with the Rav who attained the internality of the matters. They answered, 'Heavens, no. There is no internality here whatsoever, but accurate texts given to us, and nothing more than that, God forbid.' I asked them if Rav Chaim Vital had attained the internality of the matters. They replied, 'He certainly did not attain more than we do.' I then asked them about the Ri himself, and they answered, 'He certainly did not know the internality more than us at all. And all that he knew he had passed on to his disciple, Rav Chaim Vital, and thus they came into our hands.' I mocked them. How then were the matters composed in the heart of the Ari without any understanding and knowledge? They replied, 'He received the composition of these matters from Elijah, and he knew the internality, since he is an angel.' Here my wrath poured out on them, for my patience to be with them had ended. And when I saw their folly had found roots in nearly everyone engaging in this wisdom, at this time, woe to the ears that so hear. Will he even force the queen before me in the house?" From the article, Introduction to the Book from the Mouth of the Sage by Bala Sulam. There are students who study Kabbalah for many years with no actual attainment whatsoever. This is because they enjoyed the status of the aspiration without actually reaching any spiritual advancement. They sway from one physical gathering to another with hope displayed in their hearts. However, no meaningful results ever happen. Subconsciously, they're not interested in any personal growth since it would cause distance between those that advance and others who plateau. No student wants to be the individual who thinks of their own personal benefit. Therefore, they all remain empty-handed and stay in their undeveloped perception. Here's a quote. This has been among the primary reasons that made me come to this explanation. You must see in every purpose and every goal that it is utterly simple. All the wit, the cleverness, and the many issues formed during the preparation until the goal is reached. For example, when one wishes to sit in the house, he needs wit and knowledge in the design, in artisanship, and in the quality and quantity of the rooms and the possessions. The final goal is but a simple thing, to dwell there. This is the meaning of the words, according to the beauty of the man, to dwell in the house. It is a simple thought, without any concepts and proliferation, and without wit, but a simple will. Know that all the sophistications and the knowledge are mostly mistakes that should fall before the truth. Yet the truth itself is simple without any wit. There is a secret in that, principally being the iron wall that separates us from our Father in heaven. There are things that are hidden because of their great height and depth, and there are things that are hidden because of their extreme subtlety, like flies in the air, too thin to be seen. Senses light is such simple light that the human mind, which feels only a tiny portion of something, simply does not perceive. It is like the smaller things from the measure, requiring an actual tool to see. This is so because although not all of the depth of the height and the depth of the width are perceived, you could nonetheless perceive their approximate. However, with subtle things, it seems as though they do not exist at all, since you do not attain even the slightest bit of them. From the article Introduction to the Book from the Mouth of a Sage by Bala Sulam. The work requires focus and determination, which is the ego, to avoid such light-headed conclusions, such as the reforming light or some other force to do the work for us. The whole correction is to reach self-empowerment, not to follow the power of others. Because of the subtlety of the matters, an intensive environment is needed to keep us focused on the right path. It is so easy to fall into the bitter demands of an immature ego. We need to become independent on each other by using our environment to serve our personal growth. Each person needs to become a unique individual that has the power to control their lives. We need to collect various behavior patterns of ourselves and others in order to understand how the system we experience is designed. The more we are aware of the process emotionally and intellectually, this is considered increased adhesion with the Creator. Here's a quote. For this reason, when the creature is well versed in all the laws of nature and its corporeal ordinances and observes them diligently, it can be said that he knows the Creator face to face. It is as one speaks to one's friend, where each of his parts is adhered to his friend in similarity, meaning a power of imagination of intellectual forms and movements. And when we research the essence of the mind, to the best of our ability, we will find that it is by the gathering of spiritual beings, and from that collection extends its conducts. That is, all of man's advantage over the beast is that in man there is an organ that can gather within it spiritual beings. Likewise, the advantage of one person over another is in the amount of the power of the other-mentioned extension, and in the forms of the being themselves, for one extends important beings and another beings that are not so important. The difference between the spiritual being and the governance is that a boundary of the being is an intellectual image that extends and is present in one's mind unchanged, meaning it cannot be explained through events that happen over time. And the governance falls under the influence of time and place. It is just as one who is naturally stingy can give a big donation once in his life due to place or the timing. From the article From My Flesh, I Shall See God by Bala Sulam. The goal is not to accumulate historical knowledge of events. Rather, the idea is to discern how the Creator controls us in order to join with the system to consciously manipulate people. Gossip about people and how they react is crucial for any serious advancement forward. Scrutinizing the immature behavior of people might sound like negating the providence of the Creator. However, if the goal of the gossip is to reach a high degree, this is called correction of the ego. We are not actually blaming people for being undeveloped. We know that they have no free choice in the matter. This is actually the point where discernments begin, not end. And here's a quote. This surprised me. I went over the book meticulously until I realized that the book Studies of Atzilut, attributed to the Ari, is completely false and fabricated. Instead, a copy abbreviated this book, The King's Valley, and turned into a short composition, which is the book Studies of Atzilut that we have. And not only that, that copy was completely ignorant and didn't understand anything about Kabbalah. So he confused the pages in the book in a terrifying manner. Out of every 10 pages, he took half or a third of a page and copied them verbatim, then put them together into a single issue. In consequence, one issue in the book Studies of Atzilut consists of 10/3 of pages from 10 separate issues in the book The King's Valley. This is why it's so perplexing. I cannot put into writing my anger at this wicked fool, since it took me a long time to sort matters out for myself. But because of this sublime holiness of the issues presented here, I was fond of them, and so I spent a great deal of time above and beyond on this book. Letter number 33 by Bala Sulam. The reason we mock is not in order to avoid pain, but rather to create the separation between the degrees, to not fall into the filling of the lower phases. We have a great compassion towards the undeveloped and wish to raise them to higher degrees of perception. The discernments collected through the gossip enhances greatly the concepts provided. They can bridge the gap between the immature and mature. And here's the first workshop question. How did the Kabbalists use gossip? Robin.
They use it to separate themselves from the collective kind of thinking so that they could grow, to put distance between them and another phase.
Maria.
I would say to sort of study all of the inputs and outputs that we perceive in others. So if we're noticing their perception compared to ours, and how to basically be observing all of that. Look how he's looking at it. Look how he's looking at it. And from that, kind of sort of detach from the immaturity, but still be making observations about making discernments, basically, about what we are observing.
Mary.
They use gossip to help them reach a higher degree, to reflect back on how they used to think, and also to you recognize how other people view situations, and to kind of, verify for themselves their new current degree, and stay kind of pushed away from the previous degree. Maintain that state. Next.
Moshe.
I would say to widen their perception by adding conflicting ideas under one intention, which is always closer adhesion to the Creator.
So the Kabbalists use gossip to basically analyze the way the Creator controls us in very fixed and predictable manners, behavior patterns, and by analyzing how people work and basically how the Creator, the internal power, manipulates them, how the quality of bestowal manipulates the quality of reception. That's how they can learn much more about the quality of bestowal, that the power that's controlling the ego. The second question: what is wrong with gossip? Maria.
I don't know. For me, like, what is wrong with anything? You have to know in what context it's being used. So, what is wrong with gossip? I guess if it's not used to for discernment, and then again, the gossip cannot even be in front of them. We can be comparing how different people are being perceived, and they're not aware of it. But the point is to be using it for the appropriate reason, I guess, with the correct intention to gain discernment and to kind of see how the forces are how one is being manipulated behind the scenes by the force of the Creator.
Mary.
I think Maria said it well. um, you know, nothing's wrong with it. You just need to use it wisely and, you know, not, and for the right purpose, and make sure that you have the right intention, and that it's giving you clarity about your previous degrees, and you're making accurate discernments.
Moshe.
I would say there's really nothing wrong with gossip if used with the right intention, of course. Most of the time, gossip is used for filling. People love to talk about others because it gives them filling and pleasure, and that's when it's used incorrectly. When it's used correctly, just like anything, with the correct intention, then it's appropriate.
Robin.
Well, gossip, if it's just like Moshe said, if it's just used for to have fun with, if it just is an occupation, it's wrong. But if gossip is used in the right way, which is to increase your perception, and it's a way of seeing your growth, seeing how you are growing, and so forth. It's good.
The problem with gossip is that normally when we talk gossip about people, we use it as a way of filling. We normally, let's say we're feeling a little inadequate, so we talk gossip about somebody else, how they're behaving incorrectly, and then we feel better with ourselves because we're not as bad as they are. And that is, that's the problem with gossip, is that it can basically, if not used correctly, of course, it can make you get stuck in feelings. You can talk how other people aren't advancing. So you could have someone that's in phase 2, looking down on someone in phase 1 and laughing at them how, you know, they're using red strings or holy water, and therefore they're not advancing. But we, of course, you know, aren't doing those things. We're not advancing either, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the gossip of other people who are not advancing. And that's the problem with gossip, when you're using it as a way to secure your current degree instead of using it to actually advance to a higher degree. The third question: how can we use gossip to advance? Maria.
You know, I want to use another word for gossip, or maybe kind of like for what it is, or what maybe can be used wrongly. But anyway, gossip is I'm looking at a situation or something, and I'm observing and talking about those observations. Now, I guess gossip could be also making up stuff that I haven't seen, right? But we're specifically talking about observing and talking about what we're observing others perceiving. So how can I use it to advance? If I'm using all of that as a study, I think we always use it internally. I'm always, you know, looking at stuff, and I'm not talking to anyone, and I'm making discernment, you know, I'm making observations and trying to see what does this mean and so forth. So I'm gossiping internally anyway. So how is this used to advance? I think it was said beautifully, if it's not used for filling, because I tend to, you know, depending on what you're using it for, I could be talking to someone to validate how I'm feeling, to make myself feel right. Oh, and they're wrong, which is not the purpose of it. But if I'm making an observation to see, look how they're looking at it, look how they're being manipulated this way. So if we're using it to study and to advance, then we can use gossip appropriately. It's I don't want it to seem, I think that sometimes it feels offensive when it feels that we're judging them. So we're just looking at something and using something to say, look how advanced we are, which is not so, right? So we're studying ourselves too. So anyway, that's how I think we can use it to advance.
Mary.
I was just looking up analogies for gossip when Maria said that, because that word bothers me too. I think of it as, not when I think of gossiping, I think of talking about people's personal or private lives, and that's not what this is. This is talking about having conversations about other people's perceptions and, discussing our own advancement and perception. And so that's how it can be used to measure our growth and advancement, and also to, have more conviction about our current perception and belief system. Next.
Moshe.
Gossip. How does it help us advancing? Again, it comes back to the same point of having increased separation internally, and gossip allows you to do that. Again, at the end of the day, it's about unifying as many concepts as one, because it always comes back to one, unique and unified. So it's always about unifying everything and gaining a greater perception of the system.
Robin.
Well, I have issues with the word too, like Maria and Mary. I looked it up, and gossip is frivolous talk about someone else, light, frivolous talk, so in a social gathering, or talking about people's personal lives. And this article and this gossip is not in any way that. It's totally about perception, and it's about perception, and all of advancement is about cleaning our perception and making it come into alignment with the Creator. So gossip is a misleading term, but it is what happens outwardly, but just like the article described, that it's not to be frivolous. It's not to be about people's personal lives or conditions. It is serious observation and perception.
The way we use gossip is either when we want to separate ourselves from a behavior that we don't want to do, and we observe people that are doing immature behavior, and we discern it and we mock it and we talk about it frivolously to basically cause that separation. So instead of hating it, which actually is some kind of connection, we use laughter and we use mockery to basically separate ourselves from those kind of behavior. Like when parents will sometimes laugh at children's behavior to say, "Oh, you're acting like a child." They say that to cause that separation. That's one thing. The other kind of gossip is you'll sometimes even gossip about people that are more advanced than you, because you want to see what they are doing and you'll want to see how can you do the same, and you'll talk about the differences between people, and that's how we got to the classes and just more information about it. You can't reach these kind of discernments if you're not even if you're not talking about gossip. You need to think about it. You need to think of how other people are reacting, putting them in categories, putting them in structure, and being dynamic with that structure. So it's not about deciding on someone a certain thing and sticking it with for life. You constantly are seeing differences along the way, but you're just constantly in observation. And that gossip will probably be when you're talking to somebody else on the path, and you'll be sharing with them your discernments of how people are, react the same way. If, let's say, for example, they are of a certain class and so forth. So what do you think of the article?
I think that it does already, spark, how should I say, controversy, I guess. But looking at it like abstractly, I think it's needed. It is so much needed, because I'm thinking of an example of the butterfly and the phases that a butterfly goes through. And imagine a caterpillar laughing and saying, "Look at those eggs there, they don't know what they're doing." But it's a part of the maturity phases that one goes through, but only through studying that. And I'm referring to studying and observing and critiquing as gossip. can we know and learn this pattern then? Right now we know the phases of a butterfly, but suppose that we didn't. Suppose that all of that was concealed and we needed to find to study these. It's only through studying or gossip or critiquing or observing or look how the caterpillar is carrying on his life. Look how the butterfly is flying. All of those things we're using the term gossip, but it's through using that you could gain so many discernment and learn and help each other, because now, because of these observations and these gossiping and cleaning up with these concepts, we can help each other. It's all the intention that you're planning to use it. But if you know that you're doing it only for filling, then obviously there is a pain point right there. How could you be talking about them? Who do you think you are? I understand that. I feel that too, but it's the intention that you're doing it with, and the hope too that through that gossip we can find ways to help others mature, because we've all been there. That's the point. And we're all, and I'm actually looking at where I want to be too. And so if someone's what does it say? Causes lack of criticism causes decadence. We have to. I want someone to criticize my immaturity concepts, and yeah, maybe it'll trigger my pain point, but I need to grow from it. So I think it's needed. I think it's just that term that we have to detach how we are looking at the word gossip, but it's good.
No,
Well,
go for it, Mark.
Well, I really like the quotes in the article, and I like seeing that side of Baal Salam, because Kabbalah is is pictured as this sort of like, oh, I love you, and I love everyone, which in truth you do, but you don't have to be this little like baby about it, I guess you could say, or like sort of weak about it, and I like Baal Salam sort of showing that side of him of just, being angry and mocking others, immature concepts of Kabbalah and what love really is. And so, yeah, I appreciate that, to see that side of him.
I say it's when we're watching, let's say, a documentary about animals, right? And they say, look at how the animal's moving, and look how it goes and attacks the herd and all that stuff. If you're going to become a Kabbalist, which you basically want to get the quality of a story, you want to become the creator, you're going to have to look the same way that we look at animal documentaries. You're going to have to look at humans. And you're going to have to be like, look at the person who's going in the field and walking towards the other people, and look how they don't even know that he's coming to get their job. Like we basically have to become very observational. And we basically have to think from a higher perception, or from a higher perspective, and look how the creator, how internal power looks at humans, since internal power is on a spiritual degree, which is higher than the speaking degree. Therefore, it needs to look at it like that. And we do the same from the speaking degree. We look at the animal degree. We look at it from above. We say, look at how the animal's moving, and look how it's this. And isn't it funny like that? We need to shift ourselves to that degree.
That's a good way of describing it, that guy, because at the end of the day, the people that we see walking around on Earth, they're ruled by the Creator, by this one force, and they really have no free will. And it's nice to observe it that way all the time, right? So it's like a movie. You're watching a movie, and you become emotionally detached from the situation itself, and you just see it from a higher place. And really, also in a way, you're not. I guess you could say you're not. You're more forgiving of people, just because you know that they have no free will, and you are watching a movie, and they're just beasts. So it's, that's kind of where we have to be, just kind of at a higher level.
Sometimes it's painful for people. They like the idea of advancing, but they have a problem with the separation from the speaking degree. They have a problem with differentiating themselves from other people. And that's why they find gossip so hard, because they want to feel that equality. But they don't understand that if you're getting the quality of the story, you're trying to become the creator. The idea is that when you cross the barrier, you're going to be above the ego. Being above the ego means you're going to be above the ego of normal people as well. And that means you're going to be looking at them from above. You can be looking at them from a higher perception. Not from a physical perception, you're not going to be hovering in the air. The idea is that you're going to have a more mature perception, and you're going to look down on them in a sense, since you're going to be aware of their immaturity, and you're going to be thinking differently. But that separation can cause people pain, and then they want to fight it, and they basically don't understand that they're saying that they don't want to advance, because advancement means moving to a higher degree, and then you have to distance yourself from the lower degree. Later on, you will then reconnect with that lower degree and include it within you, which is called correction. But the idea, first you have to separate from the degree by going above it, and then afterwards you can reactivate that lower degree and correct it inside of you.
In the quotes, Baha Salam's criticism and everything came from a perspective of his love and centeredness in the wisdom of Kabbalah, and all of his observations and the gossip he had and everything was in seeing it harmed by what others were doing and how they were so far from it, and it hurt him. And that's where all the quotes, that's how he expressed everything from that perspective.
I have a question regarding compassion, because it seems to be that the opposite of gossiping, how someone can be interpreting it like that, could be they have no compassion. I have no compassion when I'm criticizing. Yet there's a pain felt to want, let's say that I am observing my children and I really would like for them to mature a certain concept. There's a pain involved in that I'm criticizing inside. I'm gossiping inside of how I'm seeing, like they're looking at this so incorrectly. But in order for me to be able to make that observation, I already have to have a mature concept, or else I wouldn't even be able to criticize it, because I'd be in the same plate, in the same scenario as they would. So already there has to be a recognition that, look, you're looking at it from a different perspective already. That's actually a criticism, to be able to do that. But how does one tie in compassion? How does one tie in compassion without me wanting to accept that they remain at that state? And that would be my question. How do we tie in that compassion?
When we're dealing with anything on the path, we're always going through these three concepts of one, unique, and unified. We start with the state of one. That is, it's one system. And that is basically the anomalous part, where you have to basically go above reason and say, this is one system, even though I don't see it that way. So it's one. Then you go to unique. And unique is where you're saying that each part is different, and you separate the concepts. And you're saying, this is not that, and that is not this. And then finally you reach unified, which is called sweetening, where you are taking those separations and now you're unifying them back into the system. So you're understanding the details of that oneness. You're understanding the details of how the system is working with each other. So the same thing when you're coming to, let's say, someone and you want to clean their immature concept, the first thing is you've got to understand it's one system. So they're not separate from you. It's not like, oh, there's no need to deal with them since they're in a different system than I am. And that's what people do when they think of free choice. By believing in free choice, you're basically saying everyone has their own system. And therefore, there's no need for me to share what I think to somebody else, because they could be doing something totally different. So the first thing is to understand we're all in one system. And then it doesn't make sense for me to clean their concepts. The second thing then you have to do is see the separation. Say, I have a more mature concept. Otherwise, why am I trying to clean their concept? I have a more mature concept, and they have an immature concept, and you have to see that separation. Because if you don't, what are you trying to clean? If we're all equal, and we all think the same, and everyone's corrected, and everyone's at end of correction, then what's the point of cleaning concepts? You have to see that separation between you and the other person. I have a more mature concept, they have an immature concept. And that sounds like lack of compassion. But then the final thing, which is compassion, is when you're actually helping them. You're cleaning their concept. You're raising them to a high degree. And by that, then they're able to stand on that high degree, and they won't have to come back to you for that same concept to clean. They might have to come to you for another concept to clean. But once they've cleaned that concept and internalized it, made it their own, they don't need you anymore for that concept. They'll need you for maybe for more depth or of a different concept. but they can stand on their own. So you're giving them the best kind of compassion. The thing is that if you're a rich person and you see a poor person, we like to give them money, but that doesn't actually take them out of that poor status. It just keeps them there. The best way, it says that the highest degree of charity is giving someone a job. Why? Because you take him outside of charity. You take him outside of the loop of charity. So all the other degrees of charity that many people talk about, like how, they think that a very high degree of charity is giving to someone without knowing that you're giving to them and without them knowing that you're giving to them. So you don't know who you're giving to and they don't know who they're receiving from. That is not the highest degree. The highest degree is giving someone a job, getting them out of the loop of charity, that they won't need charity anymore. So the same thing, the highest way to help a person is to bring them to a point where they don't need help, to bring them to the point where they're mature. And that's the whole idea when we say that the Creator is good, that does good. Good is mature. So God is mature. It's a mature perception and does good, which means he matures others. So the idea is that is the highest form of showing compassion. It's not just accepting someone and leaving them in their state, but rather trying to give them that independence. As it's written in the article, independent on each other. Yes, Moshe?
I agree with you 100% regarding getting somebody above charity. I've also read about the sort of different degrees of charity, of what's the highest degree. And yes, the highest, according to the books and writings, the highest degree is basically not knowing who you're giving it to, and also them not knowing where it's coming from. Just wondering if it was ever written any sources about sort of like a higher degree than that, which is getting somebody a job, or getting them outside of charity. Was that ever written by anybody before? Or
it's written in the Code of Law. There's degrees. I think it's in the Rambam, Hilchot Tzedakah.
Well, the Rambam talked about. Yeah, you're right. The Rambam talked about the highest degree of charity, because I've read it also. Is that, as far as I know, the highest degree, it was, again, what we said was not knowing who you're giving it to, and them not knowing where it's coming from. I'd never seen it written from Rambam or anywhere really about getting them out of charity. Maybe I could be wrong, but I just never seen it. So I was just asking if it was written somewhere.
I'll look at the quote meanwhile.
Yeah.
Zakai, would we say that mitigation then is the gossiping? The separation and sorting, is that mitigation before the sweetening?
Yes. So the gossip is basically in the mitigation, that's separating. That after you actually connect.
The annulment, mitigation, and sweetening, it's like the four phases: unformed, chaos, up to spirit.
That what?
The annulment, mitigation, and sweetening is related, and it's the same as the four phases of unformed, chaotic, darkness, and spirit.
If you want to, we normally don't connect it to that, but if you wanted to connect it to that, you would go where chaos would be the annulment, the darkness would be the separation, mitigation, and then the spirit would be the sweetening, the unification. So you basically unfold the situation, and then you go through the three phases of chaos, darkness, and spirit.
So basically, every time you fall into a descent, that is because there is a concept you still haven't cleaned yet.
Yes, there's a concept or a desire that you haven't cleaned.
What do you mean, desire?
Well, the idea is that at the beginning you're dealing with concepts, but afterwards you're actually dealing with desires that are not clean. So it's sort of that you're investing your energy in the wrong direction. So that you're cleaning a desire puts that desire in the right direction. aligns yourself. It's what we say when you align your conscious to your subconscious. It's alignment. I found a quote. It's in Hebrew, but I'll share it anyway and translate it on the fly. So the quote is from Rambam, Mishneh Torah, the laws of giving charity to the poor, chapter 10, items 7 to 14. And it says, there are 8 degrees in tzedakah, in charity, one above each other. The highest degree, that there's nothing higher than that, is when you are holding a Israelite, and you're giving him a present or a loan, or doing with him partnership, or giving him a job, to hold his hands until he will not need other people and will not have to borrow anymore. As it says in Vayikra, and that you held the person and he lived with you, as that you held him that he will not fall and will need you. And less than that is giving charity to the poor, that you don't know who you gave to, and the poor doesn't know who he took from. And this is called a precept for its sake. Like there was a certain place in the Holy Temple that the righteous would give secretly, and the poor would secretly take from it. And close to this is if you're giving into a charity box. And a person should not put into a charity box unless he knows that the person who is in charge of it is trustworthy and wise and will know to use it correctly, like Hananiah, the son of Tardion. And less than that is that you know to whom you're giving to, but the poor person doesn't know who he's received from, like the wise who would go privately and put money into in front of people's doors. And this is a very good thing to do, and it's a very high degree. If the people which are in charge of the charity aren't behaving correctly. And less of this is when the poor person knows from who he took, but the person who gives doesn't know. And this is, for example, when the wise would have rings of coins, and they would basically put them behind themselves so that the poor people would take from it, so they wouldn't have shame, since the wise person wouldn't know that who actually took from them. And less than that is if you give to the poor person in his hand before he asks. Less than that is when you give him correctly, but after he asks. Less than that is when you're giving him not correctly, but you're giving it in a good faith. And less than that is you're giving it in sadness. I am aware that many people don't know about the highest degree, which is actually giving someone a job, taking him out of the poverty cycle. Which, if you think of it, makes total sense. The idea is that the highest degree of anything is getting somebody out of the need of it. If someone's still needing you, then you're not helping him. You're making him dependent on you. And that's the idea of independent on each other. Yes, there is an initial dependency, but it's in order to very quickly get the person to be standing on his own 2 feet and being independent. And that's what it means, independent on each other. The goal is to be independent, and you do that using your environment, which is dependent on each other. What do you think of the quote, Moshe?
Oh, that was fantastic. I've never seen. I swear I could have sworn I've never seen that a higher one. I always saw it. The highest one was, which was the second one here. So it's very good.
What would you say is the difference between gossiping and categorizing? What's the difference, if any?
So normally gossip is when you're expressing it to somebody else. So you can categorize something, and it's normally, let's say, done internally. But when you're gossiping, you're basically talking to somebody about somebody else, about a third person. So, and normally gossip is considered when you're talking in a negative or sarcastic or mockery kind of way, which will happen when you're talking about immature concepts.
Okay, I'm good.
The idea of the articles, to basically take this thing that that I've actually got many criticism about, but the thing is that they like the articles, but they don't understand that the way I was able to write the articles was through experience of seeing people's behavior. So the idea is they like the results, they just don't like the way. But the idea is that without gossip, you just can't advance. You need to analyze situations. And the idea is that when you're talking with the friends on the path, to somebody outside, it might sound like it's gossip, but they don't understand that it's targeted. And it's not fulfilling because there's results that come out of it. There's innovation, there's a product that is coming out of this gossip.
The concept of independent on each other means that we're here to clean each other's concepts, but at the same time we are dependent because we need others to clean our concepts. So we're dependent, but our goal is to be independent, right?
Exactly. We're using a temporary dependency to reach independency. So we want to become independent by using our environment, but the idea is to grow out of your environment, not stay stuck there forever. The idea is that you might still be in contact with those people, but it will come from a place of power instead of from a place of deficiency. You'll be with them because you want to be with them, not because you have to be with them. And you could only be in a state of wanting to be with someone and not having to be with someone when you're no longer dependent on them. And then your relationship actually becomes so much stronger because it's called a friendship which is not dependent on something. Since if there's a deficiency in the relationship, it's based on something. You're getting something out of it. But when you've finished getting something out of it and you've reached a point where you no longer need the other person, then your friendship can be not dependent on something.
But that would be only in Gamartikun.
Exactly. You become independent when you reach end of correction. And then you still stay with your partner because you want to, not because you have to.
So for now, we are dependent on each other with the goal of becoming independent on each other.
Yes. And it's very important to have that goal constantly in your mind because you want to reach a point where you will be independent. And it's very important if you most societies, they're dependent on each other. And they tell you, without us, you're nothing. But there's only half the truth in that. The truth is, yes, you are dependent on your society, but your goal should be to get to a point where you don't need your society anymore. And then you can still interact with that society, but not from a point of deficiency, of pain, of lack. You can actually come to them from a situation of love, of happiness, of being content with yourself. And you can actually go to the society and invest more in the society. Since you're not going to be coming with your own deficiency anymore, you're going to be able to deal with other people's deficiencies. You can only deal with other people's deficiencies once you are no longer deficient. And that is why I always say to people, before you cross the barrier, and to a less extent, before you reach under correction, don't try to help other people advance. Try to help yourself. Use the environment to help yourself advance. And when you cross the barrier, and when you reach under correction, then you'll have all the time in the world to help other people advance accordingly. Cedric asks, how does being independent match free will? Well, the idea is that throughout the entire experience, you know that you have no free will. But you could say, because you understand there's an illusion of free will, you actually get to use that illusion. Because you know it's illusion, that's where you can use it. So as long as something's an illusion and you don't know it's an illusion, you're basically stuck in its framework. But once you know you're in an illusion, then you can actually use that illusion to your benefit. So the idea is that because you know that everything's predetermined, this plays a part that, for example, you never eat yourself for something that happened. since you know it's predetermined already. For the future, you can't do that calculation since you don't know what's going to happen. But once it's already happened, there's no point eating yourself up. You can basically spend your future energy on either correcting the situation or separating yourself from the situation or learning from the situation. And you're not going to be spending all that energy on trying to like eat yourself up on things that you should have done differently. You know that it was all predetermined. Well, I think we'll stop here and enter the after party.